I was watching a video on YouTube this morning by Professor Anton. It's called something like Phenomenology of the Senses. Really interesting and quite copacetic with some stuff I've been thinking about, which is to do with how the different sensory modalities organise the world in different ways, or have different, I guess, kind of different logics to them. And he was talking about how, for example, how sight, for example, is very perspectival. If someone stands in front of you, they block your vision, is the example he gave. Whereas they don't block your hearing. You can still hear what's going on. Vision is very kind of linear. You know, you see what's directly in front of you, or what's in that line between the object of your gaze, or the event of your gaze, you might say, the object of your gaze and the fovea at the back of the eye. Whereas hearing kind of surrounds and is interpersonal and kind of washes over all of it. It kind of leaks in a way that vision doesn't. I think that's absolutely right. I think it is fascinating, this the different conditions that the different senses operate within, and how they provide different organisational structures. I mean, one of my particular interests in that is how those different senses map onto different kinds of knowledge forms, or how we talk about different knowledge forms at least. And I think I've talked before about how certain kinds of understandings of rational scientific knowledge, empirical knowledge, let's say, tend to draw upon metaphors of vision and sight. And this is something many people have written about. And within that you have various various metaphorical entailments coming out of that. So the demand for clarity, for example, is drawing on a sight metaphor. You know, you want the space between you and this object of knowledge to be clear and to be unobscured by kind of clouds of purple prose. You want you don't want any shadows of the occult to fall across it. So all of that kind of metaphor to do with clarity, light, and this idea that you're not situated in idealized rational knowledge, that you're kind of you obtain the view from everywhere, as Nagel says, or the view from nowhere, I should say, but also perhaps a view from above. You know, and here again I'm reminded of Newton's, "If I have seen further than other men, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants." The scientific view, the way of describing that kind of knowledge, uses visual metaphors. You stand in a high place in order to be able to see more. You stand in the light if you want to be able to see. You illuminate the objects around you if you want to be able to see. And you make sure the air around you has clarity if you want to be able to see. So all these metaphors to do with light are within that. And that's very different to metaphors which draw on different sensory modalities to express, I don't really want to say different ways of knowing, because I'll have to, I've got no choice, but I'm unhappy with that different ways of knowing idea. But different ways of describing the world which rely on different sensory modalities operate in different ways, I think. So when we talk about our feelings and kind of emotional relationships to the world around us, we talk about feeling. So it's very tactile, and it has the sensory logic of the haptic and the manual and the touch. It doesn't have this claim for objectivity and the elevated viewing position and the clarity of the surrounding air that sight demands. The demands of touch are proximity, contact, individuality. Actually, you know, you can't. If I'm touching an object, no one else can quite put their hand on the same part of the object that I am. So it's very personal and individualized, and it's also kind of pregnant with promise and threat. Visualized objects, visualized events, they may be relatively close up, but it's quite possible for them to be at a distance. So you can be relatively safe in their presence. If you can see something in the distance, if I can see the balls in this field, I'm kind of fine, because they are at a safe remove, and I can run if I need to, or if I'm really hungry, I could kill one and eat it. I'd have to travel quite a long way to kill one and eat one. Whereas if I'm mobilizing touch metaphors, the implication is that I'm very, very up close and personal to that object, and it becomes much more salient. So the bull could hurt me. I could hurt the bull. And I think once you're into metaphors of taste, you're really into metaphors to do which mobilizes the taste sense modality, which again has a very different ontology to it. It is about interiority, potential poisoning, potential nourishment, highly individual. You know, if you're tasting something, nobody else can be having that taste at that time. And so I think we tend to use taste in those ways. We tend to use it as a metaphor for highly individuated, interiorized, personally salient, absolutely not interpersonal relationships to events, objects, ways of knowing, if you like. So I think there is a way in which these sensory modalities play out in terms of our interpretation, expression, conceptualization of the events and objects of the world, which is different. And I think we tend, whilst we might merge them at times and tend to, in our day-to-day life, I suppose, we're constantly mixing these metaphors. When we do it consciously, to express how we feel, what our tastes are, or what our detached scientific view of things are, then I think we quite consciously possibly suppress other kinds of sensory modalities, or I think more likely draw upon those sensory modalities as organizing structures for the kinds of thoughts that we're having and the kinds of thoughts we want to share.